Hello everyone, I'm Cintya Fahmi Fachriza Aulia, and now we will talk about article review. This time we will review article titled Risk Assessment and Risk Management Review of Recent Advances on their Foundation. Now we go to article profile. This article has titled Risk Assessment and Risk Management, a review of recent advances on their foundation. Author Thekdi Aven and author affiliation University of Stavanger, Norway. Year of publication in 2016 and Journal European Journal of Operation Research and in volume 253 in page 1 to 13. Okay, this paper is an invited review by Thekdi Aven from the University of Stavanger, Norway. The main goal is to look at recent progress in the field of risk assessment and risk management with a special focus on the fundamental idea and thinking behind the field's development over the past 10 to 15 years. The author opens by pointing out that the concept of risk has existed for over 2,400 years. But risk assessment and risk management as a proper scientific field are still relatively young, only about 30 to 50 years old. Over time, the methods and approaches have become more advanced and are now used across many areas such as engineering, healthcare, business, and public policy. The field has two main tests. In test 1 is the practical side, using risk assessment to study and handle risk in specific activities, such as running an offshore oil platform or making a business investment. In test 2, the theoretical side. This side is conducting broader research to develop the concept, theories, framework, principles, method, and model that help us understand and manage risk. These two sides are connected. Theory supports practice, and practice also generate new idea for theory. However, it is the theoretical side too that this review focuses on most. Getting into the core of the paper, a lot of it deals with the question of how risk is actually defined. It turned out there is no single agreed upon definition. Risk can mean the chance that something bad will happen, or the impact of an activity, or even the uncertainty about what will happen in the future. From all this different definition, the author draws one important conclusion, that risk always involves two key elements: consequence and uncertainty. This means we do not just care about what could happen, we also care about how uncertain we are that will happen. The author also discussed the connection between science, knowledge, and decision making. He refers to a model by Hansen and Aven in 2014 that describe how risk-based decisions are made through the following steps. Right in there, in evidence, we collect data and information, and after that, we expert carry out a risk evaluation. Then we build a knowledge base. After that, we expert carry out of a risk evaluation. Finally, a decision maker use of all of this make the actual decision. The key point here is that decisions are not based on fact alone. They are also involve value and personal judgment. For example, two situations might show the same risk level on paper, but the final decision could be different depending on what decision maker values most. Now, this one of the most important section of the paper. Summarizes the definition of risk from the SRA glossary in 2015, which recognized several perspectives simultaneously. The first one is the possibility of an unfortunate occurrence. In this section, we focus on opportunities. And number two is the potential for realization of unwanted negative consequence of an event. In this section, we focus on impact. Next is exposure to a proposition of which one is uncertain. We focus on uncertainties. Next one is the consequence of the activity and associated uncertainties. We combine impact and uncertainty. Next is uncertainty about and severity of the consequence of an activity with respect to something that human value. We have two-dimension perspective. Next is the occurrence of some specific consequence of the activity and associated uncertainties. We focus on the scenario. And the last one is the division from reference value and associated uncertainties. We define perspective. To measure risk, various metrics are used, such as a combination of probability and the size or severity of consequence. The triplet is SI, PI, CI, where is SI is a scenario, PI is a probability, and CI is a consequence. Triplet also triplet in this paper is C, K, and K, whereas C is a specific consequence, K is a measure of uncertainty, usual probability, and K is the background knowledge, supporting both C and K, including a judgment of how strong the knowledge is. Number 4 is expected consequence, damage or loss. Number 5 is a possibility distribution for damage, for example, a triangular distribution. The next section deals with one of the most important concepts in the paper, uncertainty. The author makes it clear that uncertainty is the very heart of risk. Without uncertainty, there is really no risk at all. There is two types of uncertainty. The first one is aleatory uncertainty, that is natural randomness, like the outcome of a conflict. This is handled using probabilities based on overfit frequency. The number 2 is epistemic uncertainty. This is uncertainty caused by lack of knowledge. This type can be reduced by gathering more data on information. The problem is that many risks approach rely only on probability number, but in many cases, especially complex one, a single probability is not enough to recapture uncertainty. For instance, if we do not have enough data, forcing about a probability number can actually be misleading. That is why the author recommendation about the set of tools such as Bayesian subject probability, interval probability, possibility theory, evidence theory, qualitative method. Now the paper then move on to how risk is actually managed in practice. The author has listed 3 main strategies. The first strategy is risk-informed strategies. This strategy uses the result of risk assessment to decide whether to avoid, reduce, transfer, or accept a risk. Strategy number 2 is cautionary or precautionary strategy. Focus on building in backup system, diversification, and flexible response when uncertainty is high. Strategy number 3 is discursive strategy. Build trust by reducing ambiguity, involving stakeholders, and maintaining accountability. And the general risk management process follow 6 steps. The first one is establish context. The second one is identify situation and event, analyze cause and consequence, judging likelihood, evaluating risk and risk treatment. Okay, on the topic of the precaution, the principal states are that if an activity could have serious consequence and there is still scientific uncertainty around it, then precautionary action should be taken. The author draws a useful distinction between cautionary principle border and cautionary principle and precautionary principle. The cautionary principle is a border, a place when the risk is known and can be measured, and the precautionary principle is applied specifically when there is deep scientific uncertainty. The paper also covers modern concept in risk management. One is robustness, the ability of a system to keep working even under uncertain conditions. The author notes that robustness analysis should be seen as a decision support tool, not as something that gives a definitive of answer on its own. Another concept is resilience, the ability to hold up and recover after something goes wrong. A resilient system is able to respond to threat in a flexible and adaptive way. Number 2 is monitor its own performance and anticipates risks before they happen. Learn from past experience. And then the paper also addresses deep uncertainty. Situation where data is very limited, models are unreliable, and the future is hard to predict, such as with climate change or new infectious disease. For this situation, Cox in 2012 recommend adaptive and robust approach, including tools like Bayesian model inferencing, robust optimization, and reinforcement learning. The paper is also touched on the idea of black swan event. It's rare, hard to predict even with enormous consequence. The author is stressed to need to look beyond historical data and probabilities. What table caused the world of mediocre sin, and also prepare for extreme events that fall outside known patterns. The work of extremist. The author also criticized the practice of deleting instructions set their own risk accepted criteria, arguing that this can end up favoring business interests over the wider public good. He also discusses the ELARP principle, as long as reasonable practical, which say that risk reducing measures should always be put in place unless the cost inability out of proportion to the benefit gained. And now we going to conclusion of the paper. Risk assessment and risk management have grown into a recognized scientific field that plays an important role in supporting real-world decision-making. However, the field still faces 3 key challenges. The first one is the scientific foundation is still not fully solid. Some commonly used practice can actually mislead decision makers. For example, when risk is treated simply as an expected value or a probability distribution, without considering the deeper uncertainties behind it. Number two is integrative thinking is essential for progress. This means combining different perspectives to build a stronger, more unified understanding of risk. It covers better conceptualization of risk, more honest treatment of uncertainty, combining robustness and resilience thinking, and always including human judgment alongside technical analysis. Number three is a revival of interest in foundational issue is urgently needed. To tackle the growing complexity of modern risk, including deep uncertainties, emerging risks, and large-scale societal challenges that traditional methods were not designed to handle. And now we're going to review the paper. I'm going to with the IMRAD method. The first one is Introduction. The paper written by Aven in 2016 titled Risk Assessment and Risk Management Review of Recent Advance on Their Foundation is an invited review published in the European Journal of Operational Research. This format means Aven was specifically invited by the journal as a recognized leading authority in the field of risk management. Aven opened the paper with one fundamental question. Is the way we currently assess and manage risk actually correct? His answer is not entirely. He argues that although the field has developed over 30 to 40 years, its foundation still has seriously weaknesses that could potentially mislead decision makers. The main goal of this paper is to summarize lesson of advance in the risk field, with the conviction that true program can only be achieved through integrative thinking, the ability to synthesize seemingly opposing perspective into a more complete and stronger understanding. And now for the method is an invited review. Aven did not conduct new research. Instead, he selected and analyzed the most relevant journal and scientific article from the past 10 to 15 years based on his own expert judgment. In this format, there is no obligation or to use a standard research search protocol. The core value lies in an expert assessment, not in medical recovery as much literature as possible. Even himself acknowledged a tendency to select literature close to his own research interests as an admission that reflects intellectual honesty. However, readers should recognize that this paper represents on one authoritative perspective, not a neutral and comprehensive picture of the entire global development of the risk field. Now, we have 4 results from this paper. The first one is the definition of risk remain inconsistent. There is no universally agreed definition of risk, but Aven identifies one common trait. Risks always involve consequence and uncertainty. The problem is that many practitioners still oversimplify risk as just a probability number or an expected value, an oversimplification that ignores that uncertainty dimension, which is actually the very core of risk itself. Number 2 is probability alone is not enough. Aven introduced the concept of PSOK. Every probability feature must be accompanied by an assessment of how strong the knowledge supporting it actually is. Two analyses may produce the same probability number, but if one is based on 20 years of solid data, while the other is merely a rough estimate, there are clearly not equal value to decision makers. Thekdi and Aven in 2016 reinforced this by showing that quantitative and qualitative approach should work side by side, not replace one another. Number 3, we have 3 main risk management strategies. Aven identifies 3 strategies: reach in format using assessment to resolve the guide decision. Number 2 is cautionary or precautionary. Number 3 is discursive. However, the Hollnagel et al. In 2011 note that all 3 strategies remain to focus on preventing failure while paying too little attention to understanding why system actually manage to work well under uncertainty. Number 4, we have deep uncertainty remains the greatest unsolved challenge. For conditions of deep uncertainty such as pandemic or climate change, conventional approaches are no longer adequate. Notably, Aven and Zio in 2021, written by Aven himself, explicitly acknowledged that the COVID-19 pandemic, especially limitedly in the framework proposed in his 2016 papers, demonstrating that the work still requires substantial further development. In discussion, we have strengths, weakness, and conclusion. The strength of the paper is generally valuable because Aven openly acknowledged that the way we currently access research still contains fundamental weakness. He doesn't not simply criticize. He also offers a concrete direction for improvement, particularly the idea that risk assessment must be more honest about what we know and what we do not know. As an invited review, the paper actually serves as an intellectual bridge between the classical probability school of thought and a more pluralistic and prospective approach. For the weakness, the most notable weakness is that this paper remains to focus on the conceptual level and barely engages with the realities of implementation. In Thekdi et al. In 2016 showed that even in the Norwegian oil and gas industry, the context close to Aven's our research background, applying this principle in practice is still frequently blocked by commercial pleasure, time constantly, and organization culture resistant to change. The greatest challenge in risk management is not a lack of good theory, but rather the gap between sophistication theory and the limitation of real-world practice. Furthermore, Ferrario et al. In 2016 point out that in complex systems, uncertainty often arises from the structural interaction between components, a type of uncertainty that is difficult to capture within the PSOK framework even proposed. The conclusion of the review is Aven paper in 2016 is a very well-drawn roadmap for the risk management field, showing where we currently stand, what is still wrong, and where the field should be heading. However, a roadmap alone is not enough without practicing guidance on how to navigate the real obstacles along the way. That remains the biggest gap that future research still needs to fill. And the supporting reference, we have Aven T and Renn O in 29. Also Aven T and ZOE in 2021, Ferrario E, Pedroni N, and ZOE 2016, Hollnagel E, Paris J, Wood D, Red G in 2011, and also in Thekdi SA and Aven T in 2016. Thank you everyone. We also I hope you not boring for from we talk about the article review for this time. I'm sorry for my English, and thank you everyone.